Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our anger management webinar today. My name is Deanne Bennett, and I'm the Health Promotion Specialist at 17 Wing, Winnipeg, and along with
Diane Bryan. I'm the Manager of Health Promotion here at 17 Wing, Winnipeg.
So yeah, we're very glad that you could join us today. We have a few people on the line so far. So if you don't mind using the chat just to let us know maybe where you work at within the base at Shiloh, that'd be fantastic, and we'll see who's joining us today. So for those of you who are new to Demio, on your right-hand side, you'll find the chat should appear open to you. You've got your text box at the bottom. You can also use emojis within that text box. If you look along the top, there's also polls and handouts. So we'll be using the polls feature throughout the day. You won't have to click onto that tab. The poll, when we share it, will automatically come up and you can answer the poll. It is anonymous. And if you want to get back to the chat, then you can just click back to the chat tab along the top. So hi, Erin. Glad you could join us this morning. Nice and sunny here in Winnipeg. Hopefully it's nice out there and we're getting past this little cold snap.
Yes. It's cold this morning.
I'm ready for some warm weather. But let's begin. So before we really get started into this presentation, I'd like you to all know that the presentation is the intellectual property of D&D, so you can't reproduce or retransmit the slides without permission. Some of the topics discussed in the webinar may be of a sensitive nature and are not appropriate for children. So we know that you could be watching from anywhere. So if you do have children around, we ask for you to use your parental discretion. Please understand that people's stories are theirs alone to tell and should not be shared outside of this webinar. We will not be enabling your microphone or your video during this time. However, stories shared in the chat, this goes for that too. So the webinar will be recorded. However, everything in the chat is not recorded once this webinar ceases. So active participation is definitely encouraged, but you may simply wish to observe and follow along that way if you like. So today we're going to cover a variety of topics in our hour and a half together. We're going to talk about what exactly is anger. We're going to go over some skills and tools, talking about the personal power grid, some thinking skills models. We'll describe and walk you through what Anger Mountain is, and then help, again, walk you through what a desk script is. We'll get there. It's a funny acronym. And then we'll finish off today with resources. So in the chat, if you could, please answer the following question in your own words. What is anger? What is it to you? What do you think of when you hear the word anger? I'll give you a minute there. So what comes to mind? Positive thoughts, negative thoughts, anything? So it's a feeling of being out of control. Fair. So when we break it down to its essence, anger is essentially an emotion. A dose of chemical in the brain that could caused by outside stimuli. All right. Interesting. Thank you. So when we talk about anger, when we talk about it being emotion, it isn't just that. It's a feeling. It's something that we experience, and in actuality, anger itself broken down, is neither good nor bad. It is a signal for you to do something. It's a signal that something is happening. If you put a D at the beginning of that word, it becomes the word danger. So it's really a signal to yourself that something is not right to you. It's a signal that you need to react or need to act, need to do something. So when we talk about anger, anger is an emotion towards a real or perceived grievance, and that grievance or that event could be in the past, or it could be in the present, or it could be something that you're anticipating in the future. It could be directed at yourself, it could be directed at others, and it definitely varies in intensity and duration and frequency. So anger that is happening, it's hard to control anger in the right amount for the right duration at the right, for the right amount of time in the right circumstance. So yeah, it definitely has an impact on our body, and some of that can be negative. So why do we get angry? Please use the chat again to list some things that cause anger within yourself. What are some typical reasons why you become angry? It's a very normal emotion for us all to feel. So we feel this emotion because of a perceived threat, like I said. It's not the event itself that's causing the reaction. It's really the importance and the meaning that we put on the event or the situation that does. The stronger we feel about something, the stronger the perceived injustice, the stronger our reaction. Therefore, what makes me angry does not necessarily make you angry. It's how two people can experience the same situation, and one person can react very strongly and one person can let it roll off their shoulders. So some examples we have is people not following rules. It's very fair that would cause somebody to feel that strong emotion, that anger. Breakdown in communications. Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Bridget. So unmet expectations. So when we have certain expectations for a situation, we get angry when our expectations are not met, whether it's about the future, whether it's about ourselves, whether it's about others. So unrealistically expecting all people will behave and act the way that we do is really a setup for us to experience anger. So wanting our kids to do exactly what we want them to do, the way we want them to do all of the time, sets us up for our expectations not to be met. Being publicly humiliated, for sure, these are things that really go against our inner grain. So there's often another emotion involved when anger is present. It could be anything from guilt, embarrassment, that falls in line with that example there. It could be pride, frustration, etc. So it's important to recognize what other emotion is involved when we're trying to deal with our anger. It helps us to deal with that anger. So when we talk about managing anger and managing it well, there are a few things to really consider. There are some default ways that we express anger. We're going to talk today about aggression, submissive or passive, and that passive aggressive and assertive. So everyone experiences anger and everybody expresses anger. We all have a default style when it comes to doing this. So when it comes to anger, some of us will become aggressive, some submissive or passive, and some even that passive aggressive. So being passive about a situation until it boils up and there's an aggressive action, or there's a sneaky aggressive action. So the final style, that assertive, is a learned behavior. The others are all default styles. So to be aggressive or to be submissive or passive, those are defaults. And you'll find if you really sit back and reflect, you'll fall into one of those two categories. So being assertive is a learned response. The definition of aggression is that it is a behavior with the intent to do harm to a living being, whether harm results or not. So it's It can be anything from intimidation to or threatening harm to actually carrying out harm. So it's behavior with willful blindness as to whether harm would result. And some examples of aggressive behavior include rage. If you think road rage, stepping on that accelerator, swerving around someone. The attempt is to intimidate. The attempt is to, send a message, whether or not you mean to get in an accident or hit the other vehicle or cause harm or not. It's that threat of harm or that aggressive style of driving. It could be punching a wall, right? That intimidating behavior. Yeah, willful blindness for sure. So submissive or passive on the opposite side of the spectrum is very, very common, especially when situations become very intense. We tend to back off or retreat. So people have been taught appropriate conflict resolution skills, or people who have not been taught appropriate conflict resolution skills will resort to being submissive because they don't know what else to do. It is the opposite of aggression. So instead of going towards the conflict, you're retreating away from it. It's allowing somebody else to take control and to violate your own rights. It could be being bullied. It could be taking abuse without standing up for yourself. All of those would be considered submissive behavior. So avoiding dealing with situations is considered submissive only if it's not what you really want to do. So avoiding situations for good reason can be a healthy choice. We'll talk about that a little bit later, like taking a time out for yourself. And passive aggressive behavior, this can be seen when someone is passive in the moment in front of someone else and then acts aggressively towards them later. An example is someone fails to deliver a message or talking behind somebody's back. So doing things to cause harm, but not doing them in an aggressive style or outwardly aggressive style. And the last one, assertive. Like I said, a learned behavior. So being assertive is stating what your expectations are and what you want in a way that is respectful to others. It is respectful to yourself, and it's also respectful to the other person or the other people. It focuses on problem solving or conflict resolution, and there is not the intent to do harm. So you see the difference between that and aggressive behavior. A lot of times we'll use the word aggressive incorrectly in sports. Maybe you'll say, okay, get aggressive, get in there. You're really not telling the person to go cause harm to the other people. What you're really hopefully meaning is you want that person to be assertive. You want them to be aware of the situation and problem solving around the play at hand. So sometimes that gets a little bit confusing in our daily language. Are there any questions so far? All right, over to you, Dan.
Become a problem. Does anybody have an idea when anger might become a problem? Because as Deanne said, it's okay to get angry. It's an emotion. It's neither good nor bad, but anger can become a problem when it becomes an action. Okay, sure. That makes sense. When you hurt yourself or someone else, absolutely, Aaron. Yeah, that is very, very true. Yeah, when we talk about anger becoming a problem, we talk about it like when it becomes our main response to certain people or situations. So every time I see this person, I get angry, or every time I have to go someplace to whatever place it is, all of a sudden I feel like my blood is boiling, like I'm getting angry. So that's a problem. And when it becomes our main response to most people or situations, so I'm angry all the time. When it's too intense. So I drop something on the floor and I blow a stack instead of just calmly going, okay, I dropped it on the floor. I need to pick that up. Right? If it lasts too long, So something happened yesterday and 2 days from now I'm still angry about it. That's probably I'm probably having some issues with that. Right? If it occurs in inappropriate situations, if it has a negative impact on relationships, just as Aaron said, when you hurt someone or yourself, right? When it leads to that aggression, when that rage becomes part of it, right? When anger is a problem, and when it is too long, when it is too intense, when it's too often, it can have some results on our physical and mental health. It can impair our immune system, right? We're always in that fight, flight, or freeze response because anger is the fight part of that response. So if we're always angry, then we're always kind of in a stress response. So that means that we're always pumping out adrenaline or cortisol, and that can have issues on our ability for our immune system to regulate itself. Increased levels of cortisol because of that stress response may increase the intensity of chronic pain as well. There's an increased risk of and death from cardiovascular disease. Again, all related back to that stress response. And an increased risk for anxiety and depression. Why am I being angry so often? Why is this happening to me? Right? That questioning that you might have. So the trick is, when we talk about anger, is that anyone can be angry. That's easy. That's really the easy part. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, in the right way, that's not easy. Aristotle is very clever when he said that, and is very true. Right? Everybody can be angry, but to be angry in the right way, at the right time, to the right degree, that really is the hard part. Often I will have an angry moment and I'm angry in front of somebody who is not the person I should be angry with. I'm angry about something else and I'm taking it out on this person. So, I'm figuring out how to be angry at the right time, the right moment, the right amount. That's the trick when we're dealing with anger. And hopefully we'll be able to help you with that, with some of the things that we talk about today. So we're going to look at the personal power grid. So the personal power grid is a tool that I really, really like, and I use this one often. Has anybody seen this before? Just give me a thumbs up if you've seen it before, and if you haven't, give me the thumbs down. Okay, all right. So this is exciting. So this is a great tool to look at how you can deal with anger. When something causes us stress and makes us angry, we always have a choice on how we react. But it's important to know if we have control of the stressor or not. So there's certain stressors that we have control over, and there's certain stressors that we don't have control over. Can you name a stressor that we have control over? What are some things that we have control over? Breathing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we have control over how we choose to react. We have control over our lifestyle choices, whether I smoke, whether I drink, what I eat, how much sleep I get. Those are things that I have control over. Things that I don't have control over are just about everything else. So the environment, the fact that it was -2 this morning when I woke up, I have no control over that. The fact that COVID is going on right now, again, no control over that. Other people, events, all those things I don't have control over. So when we look at how we're going to respond to things, we have to decide. So if I have control over something, I have a choice. I can take action and do something about that, or I can choose not to take action and kind of quit and give up. So a really good example of that is when you think about time management, how you manage your time, because I have control over how I manage my time. Whether I arrive early or late to something, whether I plan my day out so that it's scheduled appropriately. I have control over that, or how much I decide to take on. So if I'm having problems with my time management and I find that that's getting me angry or upset or frustrated, and then I take it out on other people, I can choose to do something about it. I can maybe start using a calendar. I can take a course on time management. I can ask other people how they manage their time. I can learn how to say no to people, to some things that just get in the way of me managing my time, right? All that results in me mastering that time management, right? I have control and I'm taking action, and that helps me to master it. And then I feel less frustrated, less out of control, and probably calmer, right? If I don't take action with that, so I either decide I'm always going to be late, which means that my boss is always going to be yelling at me, or I'm going to miss deadlines, which again means my boss is always going to be yelling at me, and the people that are relying on me to get things done are going to be upset with me, which in turn may be upsetting to me and could be very frustrating for me that I'm not getting things done on time, right? But that's quitting and giving up. I'm choosing not to take action, right, for something that I could. The other side of the grid, when you have no control. So when you have no control over the things that are outside of me. So the weather, COVID, work, what the requirements that I have at work or my responsibilities at work, the other people around me. We have two choices there. So we could try to take action and we could try to control them. And I don't know if either of you have any children, but if you've ever tried to control a 2-year-old, you know what that's like. Does not end well, and you end up probably being frustrated and angry. So that's like hanging on. Like I need to control, and just instead of just accepting that this child is 2, and I need to just take a breath and figure another way around this, right? So accepting that they're 2, they don't understand things the way that I do, right? So I'm not going to try and control their behavior, right? If they really, really, really want to wear the same piece of clothing that they had on overnight, then maybe that's okay. Maybe I can accept that and just carry on. And then later on, we'll try to get their clothes changed later. Another way to look at this is, if there's construction on the road, which springtime is construction season here in Manitoba. I don't know what it's like in the accepting toddler-like behavior in adults. So yeah, I know, but it is hard. But again, I don't control that person. So I have a couple choices when I have to deal with that person. And sometimes those choices aren't easy choices. But I'll give you an example with construction. So there's construction on the road that I take to work, and there are delays. So if I accept that the construction is there and that it's going to cause me delays, I can accept that and say, okay, so what can I do? I could leave earlier, or I could take a different route to work. If I choose to leave at the same time and take the same route to work, then I'm going to probably be late and I'm going to be angry because I'm hanging on, right? It's my choice to do that. So if I'm dealing with a toddler-like behavior in an adult, maybe what I need to do is accept that right now they're in a mood and maybe ask them, so what's wrong with you? Probably not that way. That was not a good way to ask that question. But maybe asking, is everything okay with you? How are you doing? What can I do to help you today? Right? And if that behavior continues, then maybe if you have the option, is you can choose to either end that relationship with that adult or lessen the time that you spend around that adult. So that can help as well. So you do have some choices with that. And Deanne's going to show you how those choices, what you choose, is going to impact your behavior.
Awesome. Okay, so the skills that we're going to talk about right now really fall into the mastery quadrant because they involve things that you can do. And we'll go through this example first, talking about maybe when we're not mastering this so well. This is the thinking skills model, and it helps us understand the connection between our thought and our actions. So there's many examples we could use with this, but let's start with something very relevant to all of us. The current COVID restrictions. So that is the situation. We are encouraged to stay home as much as possible, and we are not able to socialize with anybody outside of our household. So what are some current thoughts? Let's go with negative thoughts that we could have related to the current restrictions imposed upon us. So please put a few thoughts into the chat, and as we walk through this skills model, I should say. So whether inside our household, on our property, or outside our property, we're not able to socialize with anybody outside our family unit. So yeah, feeling self-isolated, missing family and friends, loneliness. So yeah, so you could think to yourself, I'm so lonely. I'm missing these people. This is stupid. I just want to get out there and see my extended family. My kids need to play. They need to socialize with other people. This isn't good for us. So all of these thoughts could run through our head, and I'm sure do run through our heads. I miss smiles. Yeah, the simple act of seeing smiles when you greet someone. You know, when you see someone's face light up when you cross paths. For sure. What physical sensations accompany those thoughts? So pick a few of those thoughts. This is stupid. I just miss hugging my friend, my mother, my whoever. What are some physical sensations? What are you feeling when those thoughts pass through your brain? So you could feel tightness. You could feel sad, exhausted. So yeah, this has been going on very long. We're emotionally exhausted. We're physically exhausted. We're anxious. When is this going to end? All of this increases the physical stress that we're feeling, right? And that physical stress can be, tightness, tension. We could feel headaches. We could feel that exhausted feeling, right? We want to sleep more than usual. This is not like, why am I so tired all the time? Why am I have aches and pains that I don't typically have? All right, so we've got our thoughts, we've got our physical sensations. What emotions come through with this? What are we feeling? I think there are some in there. Sad came through. So yeah, feeling sad, that's an emotion. What other emotions would go along with how many of us are feeling right now, how we're all feeling right now?
Anxiousness is in there too.
Oh yeah, anxious is an emotion. Frustrated, for sure. Sad, mad, frustrated. Excellent. All of the above, all at once. So these are emotions. So what behaviors might we see in ourselves with all of this combined? We're feeling frustrated. We're thinking this sucks. We're feeling tense, feeling sad, mad, and frustrated. How might our behaviors be in general or in relation to a specific situation? Something happened today, something just didn't go your way, an expectation wasn't met. How are we going to act? Staring, catatonic. Okay, so you might just that's that passive or backing off. Maybe you'd want to do something about the situation, but you just don't. There's nothing left in you. So giving up, stop doing things you normally enjoy. Yeah, I have an example. My daughter was holding on to a popcorn one night recently, and no, sorry, my daughter. Did I say my daughter? My daughter was holding on to a thing of popcorn one night. My spouse told her to go and brush her teeth. twice to stop eating the popcorn, brush your teeth. She did not listen, and so I was just like, okay, enough. I had enough of like the asking and the not listening, so I kind of walked up to her and attempted to take the popcorn from her, which is not which is a bit more of an aggressive move than I would normally do, and just, physically trying to take popcorn from my 4-year-old. I was like, what? But there's lots going on. So yeah, it could be giving up. It could be yelling at family members when it's something that would typically register here, and it's here because of all of this process that's going on. So what if we change number 2? The situation's not going to change. The situation is what it is. Yeah, so back to the chat with the first scenario, placing more stress on your kid to study harder. So yeah, kind of harping on them more. I find I do that a little bit as well with piano lessons. Like, okay, you got to practice, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I'm like, okay, back off. Like, this isn't what's needed right now. So yeah, like I said, the situation isn't going to change. The situation is what it is. What if we change our thoughts? What are some positive thoughts or some accepting thoughts that we can have related to the situation? So we're at home. We're unable to socialize with anybody outside of our family. How can we think positively about this situation? One example I have, and please feel free to continue typing in the chat. One example I have is that, you could see it as an opportunity to slow down. And there's some fatigue in that because this has been going on a very long time, but you could still take that opportunity to slow down. You can focus on the things that need to be done within your household. You can focus on quality time in other ways. So Diane said, I can call my mom. Okay, so yeah, you can still connect with your mom, and I know for Diane the distance is there anyway with physical location, so you can take that time and you can connect. Once the house is clean, it gets hard to find the positive. Fair, yeah. So we have FaceTime calls. Are there things we can do for ourselves? Is there personal growth and just listening to our bodies, listening to what we need that we can do? Is it even the mindset that this will pass at some point in time? We don't know when, but this isn't going to last forever. Thoughts. I can work out to relieve my stress. I can do something about this. I can control what I can control. If we have these thoughts, any of the above, all of the above, what are some physical sensations that happen along with that? I can do this, 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 or this. I will slow down. I will listen to my body. Hopefully we feel more relaxed in our body. Hopefully we feel our shoulders settle down, our neck lengthen. Hopefully we feel relaxed and calmer. When we feel relaxed and calmer, what emotions do we feel? What are some of our feelings? Hopefulness, yeah. It gives that space for hope to come in, which is huge, which really is a turning point for everything. It's a really good word there. So when we're feeling hopeful or confident or in control, and something happens that doesn't quite go your way or doesn't meet your expectation that day, what is your behavior? Like, I'd like to think that my daughter crunching on popcorn wouldn't have caused me to tense, walk over to her and physically try to take the popcorn away from her. I think it would either have carried on as a conversation or even a conversation. Are you still hungry? Do you need something else to eat before bed, before we brush your teeth? Maybe that question comes out instead of the action, right? So I hope you can see how going back and changing our thoughts. Number 2, can't change the situation. If we can change it, number 2, it has a trickle effect and it affects the whole situation. Now, this diagram is really an expanded version of this picture. So this just goes to show us that stress in itself, so all the stresses that life throws at us, the event, whether it's an internal stressor, something we're putting on ourselves, whether it's external, it's something from the environment we can't control, these things happen and they're going to happen for the rest of our lives. But when those things happen, they have to pass through our brain. They have to pass through our mental filter, and we put our interpretation, our judgment, our beliefs, all of those things on it. And that determines how we manage stress or if we don't manage stress. So that goes to show how the same thing can happen to 2 or more people, and how their self-talk, what they tell themselves about the situation. Am I telling myself a good story? Am I telling myself a bad or catastrophic story about what is just happening, can lead to the difference in managing stress or not managing stress, or managing those situations incredibly different. So I will give some examples of trigger thoughts and coping thoughts. So a trigger thought is something that intensifies emotions, physical sensations in your actions. It may create a reactive response to a stressful situation. I think we've described that pretty well. Some examples of a trigger thought would be, that person is always ignoring me. Are they? Or are we exaggerating or putting more into that situation than is there? Or, I'm sick of having to tell him or her over and over to turn off the TV. So those are thoughts that are going to intensify a situation, unless we change the way we think about it. So coping thoughts, on the other hand, decrease our emotional response and our physiological sensations and our actions. And these coping thoughts allow room for the calm response to a stressful situation. So some examples are, that person may not have heard me, or they may have become distracted. He or she is not doing this to purposefully ignore me. He or she enjoys watching TV so much that it's hard for them to listen. That one's always a little funny to me, but you know what I mean? There's our self-talk, our internal dialogue that happens over and over again, and we refresh and we tell ourselves a story. And like Dan said in the chat, watch out for words like always and never. Those are so generalizing, and they can really trigger an angry response. So if we look at it, there's a stressor. If we have a coping thought, it leads to a problem-solving situation. If we experience that same stressor and pair it with a trigger thought, it is more likely to lead to an anger situation. Very anger generating, feel that tension and go through the cycle. So our beliefs and our thoughts affect whether or not we put a coping thought or a trigger thought into a situation. So acceptance and certainty that something is real or true, and so our past experiences with things really determine how we see a situation. So it's sometimes good to take a step back and really realize what kind of lens we're seeing the situation through. Any questions, any thoughts on that? All right, pass back to Diane.
All right. So what we're going to look at right now, as soon as I find how to turn the page over, we're going to look at the anger mountain, or how anger arousal impacts our thinking and what that correlation, because as our anger increases, our thinking decreases. When we enter that fight, flight, or freeze response, as our amygdala takes over to protect us from danger, our thinking gets narrow and narrow, because really all it has to do, all the brain really needs to focus on is that danger, how to get out of that danger. And it's not really doing a whole lot of problem solving or figuring out what it wants to do. It's deciding, do I stick around to fight? Am I going to freeze and play dead? Or am I going to get out of here? Really, that's all the choices it needs to look at when we're in that stress response. So there are some stages to the anger mountain. So the trigger stage, that's when you might have an argument or a physical attack or information that may trigger this phase. You start to feel threatened either emotionally or psychologically or physically. And you may temporarily freeze as you kind of assess the situation. What's going on? What did he just say to me? Is that okay or not? And your body begins to prepare for that challenge, right? You're starting to think, okay, what's going on? And then the escalation phase, that's when the body's arousal systems prepare for that crisis. So your heart rate could start to increase, your breathing rate could start to increase, your muscles could start getting tense. The body prepares to attack or defend itself by pumping adrenaline into the system. Red, your face might get red, you might be feeling cold, or sweating can result from that. And if you were going to have a timeout, which Deanne's going to explain either, this would be the time to do it, the escalation stage, before you get into sort of that crisis stage of the anger mountain. Right? Because when you're in the crisis phase, the body has maximized its preparation, and a chemical command is issued: take action. During this phase, people are not able to listen, have empathy, or think about the consequences of their actions. They are in full-on protection mode. And then the next stage would be the cool down stage. And this is when the body begins to recover from the stress and the expenditure of that energy. The level of arousal tapers off slowly. The quality of judgment begins to return. So this is why when we have an argument with somebody and then 10, 15 minutes later, you think to yourself and you go, oh, I should have said that. That was the whole answer right there. And that's because we weren't thinking in the crisis stage, but now as we're cooling down, it's starting to come back to us. Our reasoning is coming back to us. Our judgment is coming back to us. And if you've taken a time out, this would be important not to return until the body has had a chance to recover from the result of the adrenaline high. And it's usually about an hour after that. Right? And then the final phase is a depressive phase. And this is when the body enters a short period in which the adrenaline and the heart rate actually slip below normal as the body regains balance. And feelings of exhaustion can pervade. So if you've ever had a really heated, angry moment, afterwards you can feel so exhausted afterwards. So that means that you're in that sort of that depression age. Your consciousness, your awareness of your consciousness has returned, and you could be feeling guilty or regret or depressed by what has happened in the crisis center. So, and through all that time, your thinking finally comes back to what it would be normally. Does that make sense? We're going to show you a video that's going to actually show you somebody in the anger mountain, how they go from trigger to escalation to crisis, cool down, and depression. And you'll see how their thinking disappears. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. And we were going to just one moment, please, because I've lost it. Here, I thought I was being all great and ready for everybody.
me. I know you didn't think anyone would catch you, but you just slammed your door into my car. The least you can do is say you're sorry, lady. You don't have to take that tone. It's not like I'm hurting your resale value. I'm sorry. See? Like that. Lost control.
All right. So could you see the anger mountain in that? Could you see her progression, both of their progressions, I guess, through the anger mountain? I mean, the trigger was probably when the one woman made fun of her vehicle, and then it just it's accelerated from that point on. Right. And at the very end, she talks about, I don't know what happened. I don't remember what I did. Right. And that's kind of in that depressive stage. So that's the anger mountain, and how you would forget what's actually going on and do some things that you probably would have never done otherwise because you're in the anger mountain. So Deanna's just put up a poll. I'm just interested to know, have you ever experienced the anger mountain? Yep, not surprising at all. I think we've all been there at one time or another. All right. So I have a few myths that I just want to go over with you. So again, we're going to do these as polls. So comes the first one. I get angry because situations and people make me angry. What do you think? Is that true or false? Oh, kind of split 50-50. Okay. Not bad. Okay. So this actually is a myth. It's not the situation or the people that make me angry. It's my perception and interpretation of the event that causes anger. So if we go back to where Deanne was talking about that simplified version where you have the event and then it passes through your brain or your mental filter and then you react, that's what causes you to be angry. It's how you see the event, how you perceive what is going on that's going to cause you to be angry or not. Right? I can look at a situation and it not bother me at all. Somebody else could look at that situation and have an anger generating moment. So it all depends on my response, right? It's my perception and interpretation of that event, not other people. As much as people will say that, it's really my response to those people that make me angry. So the next one is, I'm looking for it. Oh, maybe I didn't put this one up.
No, I put up.
Oh, you did already. Thank you very much, Deanne. I appreciate that. Right. Yeah, people, what do people do instead? If they don't respect me when you're angry and aggressive, what is it? They're more likely to be afraid of, or they can even be hostile towards somebody who's angry or aggressive. People respect others that can stay calm and communicate clearly. And calm doesn't equal weak. We often say, well, if I'm calm and I don't get mad or angry about something, then people will think I'm weak. And that's far from true. It's a lot harder to remain calm, right? Because that's not our default. Our default would be to get aggressive or to get submissive or passive aggressive. Those would be our default. But to remain calm, that's much harder to do. And then I have one more, Deanne, if you could put that one up as well. I have to be aggressive in order to get what I want. What do you think? Awesome, for sure. Yeah, being angry and aggressive often leads to feeling guilt or revenge or other costs. These costs usually outweigh the benefit of getting one's own way in the short term, right? So when you look at the cost and benefits of having an angry, aggressive response to the costs and benefits of having a calm response, usually, in most cases, I would say probably in all cases, a calm response, you're going to have more benefits than you would to having that angry, or the benefits would be more. The cost would be greater for an angry response. Okay. And then Deanne is going to carry on.
All right, I'll go through the last myth and fact with you, and that is, it is healthy to vent anger. The release of anger by yelling or punching will result in a decrease in angry feelings. Myth or fact? Okay, so mixed again for this one. I think that it's very common for people to think that this is a fact. However, studies show that venting your anger does not necessarily result in a reduction of anger. On the contrary, it states that venting can increase in anger intensity and expression as we relive the moment. So it almost reinforces that behavior. Let's imagine you're punching on a punching bag. It's reinforcing that anger generating thought and the feelings. Similarly, if I vent my anger or frustration to Diane, I'm reliving and I'm solidifying my thoughts and my feelings about the situation.
You almost feel your blood pressure and your heart rate rising as you're retelling the story.
Yeah, so it's instead of letting that feeling and emotion dissipate and thinking about it differently or working towards problem solving behavior, it's almost like being stuck in the anger, stuck in the emotion, that reinforcement. Okay, I'm going to move back to the chat. I see there's something else in there. It is tricky. All right, so another model for us to look at together, the anger management model, very similar to what we've looked at before, very similar to that thinking skills model, but we've added beliefs in there and the cost benefit at the end. The other unique thing about this model is, notice all the arrows, it really just shows that all of this happens at the same time. It's all meshed together, unlike the other model where it's very linear. Things don't, you think things and then you feel things and then you act. It's not like, yes, that all is a trickle effect, but it doesn't always just happen step by step in a nice linear fashion. It is usually meshed into a whole bunch of things that we're feeling, thinking, behaving all at once. So, like I said before, our beliefs, our beliefs, things that are intrinsically, our beliefs and our values, things that are true to us, really do influence our perception of a situation. So I could see a situation differently than the next person. So all of that comes together, those emotions, the beliefs, the sensations, how I'm feeling that day is going to affect how I perceive a situation. Could be different from one day to the next, resulting in my behavior. And then my behavior is going to, the result of my behavior is going to have a cost or a benefit. So if I behave aggressively, what are the costs to that? What are the benefits to that? If I behave passively, what are my costs? What are my benefits? If I behave assertively, so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to think about. What if you want to pop some of that in the chat? If we behave aggressively, what are some costs to that? So yeah, even just thinking about different ways we act. So yeah, we can have the perception of an angry person, or we can't bring this to this person because they're hot-headed. They're going to react. You might have a situation where you'd like to disclose information to a person, but you want to test the waters, see what kind of mood they're in that day. If you're perceived as an angry person, people might not share information that is vital with you. It can ruin friendships. It can burn bridges, most definitely. So that's an idea of thinking through those cost benefits, and sometimes this can be something that you do after the fact, but it's really important when dealing with situations in the future. It might actually be really good as a reflective tool on situations that you have acted on in the past, and so you can learn from that and change your behavior moving forward. Paying for expensive items that were broken when I was angry. Yeah. You punch a hole through a wall, someone's got to fix that wall. You got into the car accident that we witnessed from the Malcolm in the Middle scene, and there's some vehicle damage that's going to have to be repaired there. So yeah, and scaring people. Yeah, that is something that is not easily mended. Scaring people, whether it's children, whether it's people in your workplace, whether it's friends, whether it's your spouse. So that's a big cost of aggressive behavior. So we're going to start moving into communication and communication styles. We'll start with the foundation of what we have already been talking about today. So that communication along the spectrum. We've talked about all three of these. So I'm going to describe these communication styles. With submissive communication, people are not expressing their honest feelings, their honest needs or values or concerns. With submissive communication, People are allowing others to violate their space, deny their rights, or ignore their needs. It can look like disqualifying statements by apologizing. So you could say something, but then say, I'm sorry, but, and it takes away the weight or the value of what you're actually saying. To say something, say, oh, but it doesn't really matter that much. It probably does. Oh, but do whatever you want. Those types of statements are submissive. It definitely sends mixed messages. It's not a clear statement that you're making to the other person. Do this, but don't do this. Do this, but it doesn't really matter. Does it really matter? It's confusing. On the other end of the spectrum, the far right is aggressive. So that is expressing one's own feelings, needs, and ideas at the expense of others. So bulldozing through. It's my way or the highway. It's got to be, my needs are going to be met. It uses aggression to win arguments, which could look like yelling, abusive behavior, rude behavior, sarcastic behavior. A person who's behaving aggressive could seem to have a chip on their shoulder, and they're more likely to use anger, or a conversation is more likely to use anger or to result in anger. And then in the middle, like I said, that assertive communication, the assertive behavior is a learned response. So with this assertive communication, it's stating what your experience is and what you want in a way that is respectful to others. It respects yourself and it respects everybody else at the table. It focuses on problem solving or resolving conflict. And that is what we will be getting into.
All right. Any questions about those three different styles of communication or how we communicate with people? Give us a thumbs up if you're okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So the first rule of communication, seek first to understand, then be understood. Communication is how we express our ideas, our thoughts, our feelings. It's how we gain respect and credibility or lose respect and credibility if we communicate with anger and aggressiveness. The better we communicate, the more likely we are to have our ideas welcomed and accepted by others. Good communication assists us in making decisions, but we really have to understand what the other person is saying. And I think too often we don't do that. We don't take the time to understand where they are coming from. So we really need to learn how to listen. We need to understand the person's interests. Why are they saying this or acting this way? What is important to them? So some guidelines for the listener is to pay attention. Listen to what their words are saying, what words they're using, but also listen to or reflect on their body language. What's your body language telling you? If my arms are crossed and you ask me a question, I go, fine. I'm not fine, right? So pay attention to what you're hearing, but also what you're seeing. Show people that you're listening, right? We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. Right? So we should be using both ears to listen. And often we don't. Often we have 1 ear on the conversation and the other ear listening to something else. So we need to really focus and pay attention. We should actually be, if we're really listening to somebody in a deep conversation or intense conversation, we should come out of that conversation feeling tired, because it takes a lot of work to be able to listen to somebody. Provide them feedback. Check it in kind of to make sure that you're understanding what they're saying. So make sure you've got that message right. Delay that judgment. We are all very good at judging things. In our brain, we start judging things. Oh, this is going to be good or this is going to be bad, right? That whole self-talk thing that gets us into that thinking skills model. So if I'm thinking somebody's starting to talk to me and in my brain I'm going, oh, this is going to be great. Right away, I've shut off. I've stopped listening, right? Because of that comment. Oh, this is going to be great. I'm rolling my eyes, right? My stance is probably, I've got one hip stuck up in the air. right? And I've really stopped listening because I'm probably formulating the response that I'm going to give them later, right? So we want to listen to understand, not listen just to respond to them, right? And so when we respond, we want to be able to respond appropriately. So giving back almost the same intensity that they're giving you, right? If somebody's angry, though, you really want to be able to calm them down. But we need to listen and understand what they're saying. And then guidelines for the speaker. If I'm the one that's talking, what I need to do is use that assertive communication. I need to speak for myself because I don't understand. I don't know what somebody else is going through. I'm not going to assume the way that you are feeling if we're having a conversation. Speak clearly and slow down. When we get angry or excited, there's a tendency for us to speak quicker and even speak louder. So we need to slow it down so that we can make sure that the other person has a chance to actually understand what we're saying. Use those I statements. Make everything come from, this is how I feel. This is what's happening to me. Be brief and stay on topic. So don't go off on a tangent. Don't start kitchen sinking everything and bringing everything that this person has done wrong to you in the last 20 years into this conversation. Just deal with whatever it is that you're communicating right now. And give the listener a chance to speak, to paraphrase, to ensure that you understand that they understand what's going on. Does that make sense for communication? I'll show you that model, this model that Deanne talked about earlier. But does this make sense? When we're talking, really, really important, to really understand what the other person is saying. So when we look at the disc script model, what we're looking at is this is a way of being assertive in your conversation, especially when things are tense, when you're angry about something and you want the other person to understand what's going on, or maybe what's happening, what are they doing that is causing you to be frustrated, right? So the D stands for describe. We want to describe the behavior. We need to be objective and, again, non-judgmental, right? So we need to avoid those words like always, never, only, right? Because automatically that places a judgment. So we need to describe what we see and take everything else out, right? And be very specific instead of being vague. So saying things like, you never help out. First off, I'm judging the person. And that's really vague. I have no idea what you're talking about, right? So saying things like, you haven't done the dishes in the last week, right? That's pretty descriptive. So I understand what you're saying. So limit yourself to the behaviors that you can see. Don't assume anything, just the things that you can see. And then express your reaction, your feelings, your thoughts about what happened. Specify what you need in that situation, right? The kitchen is messy. The kitchen is dirty. The dishes aren't put away. This makes me feel anxious and nervous and concerned, right? That's how I'm feeling because the kitchen is dirty. What I need is us both to chip in to clean up the kitchen, right? So when we dirty dishes, we need to put them in the dishwasher. When we pull out some bread, we need to put it away. And then the consequence is always positive of what will happen if I get what I need. If the kitchen is clean, then I'm going to feel more relaxed and more excited to actually get in there and prepare our meals. Does that make sense? So it's really just telling people what I see, how it's making me feel, what I need to happen, and if it happens, how I'm going to feel, right? What will happen if I get what I need? Or what will happen? And it doesn't necessarily mean what's going to happen to me. It could be for everyone. Then we could go out and play. Then we could go do something. We'll meet our deadlines. Whatever it is, right, that we're trying to describe. And really be careful about using the word but. When we use the word but, it tends to put walls up around people. People get anxious and sort of it. So use the word and instead. And I need you, or and this needs to happen. Okay? Any questions about the DISC script? So you're hoping when you use a DISC script that the person's going to come back and agree with you and say, okay, yeah, I'll do that. If the person comes back and says no, then you just turn it around them. So this can't continue this way. So what are you willing to do? And if they've agreed and or they've given you a solution and they don't do it, then the next time you have the conversation, then the consequence could be negative as opposed to positive. But you always want to try to be positive at first to work through that problem solving. Now I'm going to pass it back to Deanne.
All right, so we're going to talk about some things that we can do to prevent or lessen our angry moments. So these tools here can be used to reduce the tension created in dealing with anger-generating situations. So these strategies listed here are definitely not permanent solutions to the problem because they're not problem-solving strategies. So the problem won't be solved, but these are lessening the effects of the heat in the moment. They're effective at preventing further damage to the relationship, both personal relationship or professional relationship or both, when the feelings are intense, when the heat is high. So these tools can be used. Distraction is very helpful in highly emotional situations. It's helpful to refocus emotional energy. And distraction activities could be things such as reading, playing a video game, watching a comedy, or other, going for a walk, clearing your head, ways to temporarily escape emotional tension. And that can help. Like I said, definitely not a problem-solving strategy, but this can be done to re-engage rationally with the problem rather than emotionally. So it takes that emotion out of it. It creates that time, that space. You've done something to distract in the moment, and then you'd have to come back to the problem later. So it could be combined with some of these other strategies, which are avoidance. So most avoidance is really effective with a predictable stressor. So you know that your morning call with your supervisor is going to be a list of things you need to do today, but it's going to be presented in a way that really gets under your skin and makes you tense. So maybe avoidance, maybe letting that call go to voicemail. If your supervisor provides the list of things you need to do on the voicemail, then you can listen to it and go through that list at your own pace. That's an example of avoidance. It decreases the chance of that angry confrontation. The problem can be dealt with effectively at a later date. So you could have that conversation with the supervisor using the DISC script about how the extra part of the conversation that causes you to react makes you feel. A planned escape. So this avoids the need to run from an anger problem, something like that automatic response where you need to flee the situation. So it gives you control over your emotions and helps others involved to take time to think instead of react. So if you're having a meeting with people that typically tensions run high, maybe you plan a short meeting where the topics can be presented, and then there's going to be a space between then and the next meeting where people can, where the ideas can settle, where people can process the information on their own time, and then you can come together again and deal with it. Maybe it has to be a series of short meetings, or if you're delivering news that you know somebody has to settle from, is that what you mean, Diane? Have them call you back when they're ready to discuss it?
Become intense, I can always ask somebody else in the office just to knock on my door or to check in on me in 10 minutes to make sure everything is okay.
Exactly. You hear this often. A good analogy would be, on a date you're uncomfortable with, and you have somebody text you, and that's your way out if you need it. Otherwise, you're like all good if things are going good. So same idea, but works for any situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that just having that text message or the phone call that comes through, the knock on the door, as an excuse to end if you need an escape at that point in time. So timeout is more of a bigger version of that planned escape and can be discussed. So it's just taking a step back from the situation, gives you or both parties or all parties time to think about what to do next. During that timeout, distraction can be used, but it's also a time to use your coping thoughts. It's a time to use that positive self-talk to calm yourself down, to help you get into your rational brain and start thinking of possible solutions. It helps you, that timeout, that space helps you return to the situation in a calm or calmer manner. So you can see how some of these situations, some of these tools can be used together or separate, but their main intention is to take the heat out of a situation and allow time to go back with rational thinking when attacking that desk script or any other kind of problem solving situations. Does that make sense? Do you feel that these or any of these could be helpful for you? Good.
I use avoidance a lot.
Yeah. My default would probably be distraction, but
yeah, I use time and distraction too. But yeah,
taking a time out or anything like that just to settle down is really, really helpful. So we talk about coping. We're talking a lot about things you can do in that mastery quadrant today, right? We're talking about the things that you can do to make changes in your interactions with others. So coping really falls into that. Ways that you can cope personally before, ways you can cope during a difficult situation or a conversation, and ways you can cope after. So before, some of these you'll know and very instinctive, but breathe, right? It's come up today. Take a deep breath, centering breath, engage your rest and digest, your parasympathetic nervous system. Keep your emotions under control, keep yourself calm. Recognize difficult conversations have the potential to generate anger. So just even knowing that fact going into the conversation will help you recognize the changes in your body, will help you recognize how you're reacting in the situation. It's important before the conversation or the situation to be realistic about your strengths and your weaknesses. Know your triggers, know how to recognize them, know your limits, know when you need a timeout. Be aware of how you might trigger other people. So especially with people you know well, or you pick up on the things you do that will quickly intensify their anger. Self-care is very essential. So before this conversation, take care of your basic needs. Think to yourself, that HALT acronym. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I feeling lonely? Am I tired? Any other things, any other basic needs that you need to take care of first? Going to the washroom, eating something. Establish your goals. What do you want out of this conversation? What do you want out of this situation? So understand what you want to accomplish, what will make this feel good to you, and write down your plan, especially if this is really important, if this is a big deal. Writing down some jot notes, or writing down even more detailed notes, writing down your plan for the situation. Now, during the situation, there's a lot of things we can regulate, and maybe a little bit less, but it's really important to manage those things we can. So that our breath is going to come into play there. Something happens that could be a trigger thought. Taking a deep breath, pausing, will help. Manage your trigger thoughts so you can control the story you tell yourself. Between your 2 ears, you're able to tell yourself a story. You're able to recognize your trigger thoughts, and you're able to modify them if need be. So use coping thoughts. Take your time out if necessary. Use the good listening skills. Be in the moment. Free yourself of other distractions. So whether that's internal thoughts, whether that's a cell phone, whether that's a television on in the background, be in the moment. Use your good listening skills, and use your assertive communication skills. So talk about, state what's important to you, and use the desk script. After the conversation, after a heated conversation or a potentially anger generating conversation, breathe. So 1, 2, and 3, it fits everywhere. Take those deep breaths, take the time to relax and manage your stress. Recognize what worked well and what didn't. So that self-reflection is really good for getting better at these conversations in the future. So keep focused on the problem and not the people. So that avoids if we're focused on the people, that leads us to grudges, that leads us to resentment, that leads us to a whole bunch of other things. But keep focused on the problem. If the problem isn't solved, then that can be approached differently at a different time. And you want to be forgiving of yourself and of others. So recognizing that we're not perfect. We're not going to have perfect conversations, and that goes both ways. Don't dwell on the issue. Give yourself a mental break from the situation. So that's a really good time to employ those distractions, right? Let yourself get the self-care that you deserve, whatever that looks like. And that's going to be very, very individual. So take time to practice that self-care. It'll help you come back to the situation or the problem refreshed, ready to go. Any questions about coping? Okay.
All right, we're almost finished. So now we're just briefly going to talk about forgiveness. And I think forgiveness is important. Deanne brought it up a bit about how to cope after a conversation. So forgiveness is a difficult concept. And when we're angry, it's sometimes really hard to forgive somebody. We like to hold those grudges and keep that blame going, that sort of have that self-righteous, better than you are going on, and not wanting to forgive somebody. So when we're talking about forgiveness really only involves one person. It involves you. Forgiveness is the act to enter into the process. It's a choice. Forgiveness is about peace of mind. And it means that we will be less emotionally reactive in relation to someone who's hurt us. So think about it like an airplane that's flying around. So the hurt is like that airplane flying around. And forgiveness is like finally letting that plane land and get into the hangar to say, okay, enough. I'm not going to be watching that plane go around and around and around. I'm going to let it land and let it go back to the hangar. And that's really what forgiveness is all about. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. It's not about forgetting. I don't have to forget what happened. I'm just going to be less reactive. It's not the same as excusing either. It's not the same as reconciling. I may never reconcile with the person who has hurt me. There's nothing to do with that. And forgiveness doesn't make you weak. And the last thing, forgiveness doesn't depend on the other person acknowledging their wrongful behavior. Has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with yourself. So if you decide that you want to forgive somebody, you need to sort of decide or declare that intention to forgive, to stop seeking revenge, retaliation, to stop allowing that bitterness and that anger to take over when you either interact with or think of that person or that event. And I know that is extremely hard to do. It's being able to recognize that you're hurt and that that you were hurt and that you were angry about something, to allow yourself to feel this hurt and to acknowledge that a wrong was committed. So recognize that. And then acknowledge that your needs or your expectations were never met. Right? You've got that where there's that unmet expectation. And then choose to end or renew the relationship. And either one is fine. You can just decide, we're going to move on. I understand that you hurt me. And I'm not going to let you do that to me again. But we have to work together. So let's move on. Let's move forward. Or if you have if you choose, we're never going to talk to each other again. And I'm going to end that relationship. Either way, you're going to let go of what's going on, of all that hurt that you've been feeling. And not a very easy thing to do, I know. The other thing you need to do is you need to forgive yourself. And this one probably is even harder than forgiving others. Right? We've all done things that we're maybe ashamed of or wish we hadn't done. And we need to be able to, again, let that go. Let those planes land. Right? So again, decide or declare your intention to forgive yourself. Acknowledge that your actions or your words hurt the other person or hurt yourself. Choose to consciously let go of your guilt. There's a myth around that the more guilt you feel, the sorrier you are. Guilt keeps you locked in the past and keeps you tied to what happened. So we need to let go of that guilt. Remind yourself too, every time you feel that guilt creeping in, remind yourself that you made that choice to forgive yourself when those feelings of guilt and regret resurface. Go, I know I made a mistake. I'm going to let it go. I've learned from it and I'm going to move forward. Again, not an easy thing to do. Are there any questions about forgiveness? Okay. So just some resources that are available for you. So Canadian Forces Members Assistance Program, CIFMAP, 1-800-365 days the year. Referral service. They also have a crisis counselor on the line too. If you are in crisis, you can call them, but they will refer you outside the chain of command, free for military people and their immediate family members. So it can be used. The family information line, again, 1-800-365 days the year. Counselors on the line. They're all social workers. You can schedule meetings with them if you want, regularly scheduled meetings, but you can call them and talk to them. And they are well versed in what it's like to live a military lifestyle. The Conflict and Complaint Management Services, CCMS. Again, anything to do with conflict or complaints, grievances, these are the people that can help you. So we do have an office located in Winnipeg. I don't believe there's an office located in Shiloh, but I could be wrong. But anyways, so that's the number that you would call to get those services. They do all the ADR stuff. So the alternate dispute resolution services now fall under the Complaint and Conflict Management Services. There's Help Promotion. So through Help Promotion, you could take the Managing Angry Moments. It's a 2-day course that you could take to learn how to better manage your anger moments. This is an overview of the course, but if you wanted to learn more, it's a 2-day course. So currently we're not offering anything in person because of COVID restrictions, but once we reopen again, either in Shiloh or in Shiloh or another base that you're at. And the Military Family Resource Center also has social workers and resources there to help you should you need them. Any questions? All right, Deanne's going to throw up the last poll then. So, do you feel like you can apply what you've learned today to your daily living? Let us know. It's a good indication to help us know how we did. Awesome. That is great. Glad to hear it. And then finally, if you need more information, you can contact either Deanne or myself. That's our email addresses. We're on the CFMWS network, so you can contact us through there. We're also on the D1. However, we're not in our offices currently and don't have access to it. So CFMWS is better. Or you can contact Ginger Lamoureux, who is your manager of health promotion in Shiloh. And that's her contact information as well. Or visit calfconnection.ca for some more information on what we have.
Today, we hope you have a good rest of your day, and hopefully these tools can help. They definitely take practice, so be patient with yourselves.
Yeah, I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, me too.
Every day a little bit better. No problem, Sophie. It's our pleasure to do that. Yeah, if you or anybody you know is looking for some information on different topics, just get in touch with Ginger, and we are more than happy to be able to do a webinar with you. We've got a couple coming up. We're doing one on injury prevention for you in June, on
June 8th.
June 8th. We're going to do something on injury prevention, and then we have something else.
Mental fitness suicide awareness hour-and-a-half brief on Monday, June 14th.
Right. So we have those coming up for you. Ginger's got the information. Those will be on Zoom because we're losing our access to this platform at the end of the month. But yeah, so Ginger has all the sign-in information for that, so you can get a hold of her for that, or get a hold of us for that, and we can send that to you. All right. That's it for us. So have a great day.
Take care.
And a great weekend. Thank you.
Micah.